morning. It is Thursday, October 30th, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, after the assassination attempt in Jerusalem of right-wing activist Yehuda Glick, Israel orders the closing of Temple Mount to Jews and Arabs until further notice. The Obama administration insists there is no crisis in relations with Israel, despite a report that quoted an unnamed official using a sharp insult to describe Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And later on the show, late actor Robin Williams' last film might be in danger of never reaching the screens. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. First, we begin with the breaking news coming out of Jerusalem overnight. Prominent U.S.-born extreme right-wing activist Yehuda Glick was seriously wounded in a drive-by shooting late last night outside the Menachem Begin Heritage Center in Jerusalem. Glick, a spokesman for Israeli groups advocating greater Jewish access to the Temple Mount, was shot by a gunman on a motorcycle who opened fire about an hour after the closing of a conference that dealt with the status of Jerusalem. The police did not immediately say whether they considered the shooting a terrorist attack, but there are conflicting reports coming out that an assailant, a suspected assailant, a Palestinian, was gunned down hours later in East Jerusalem in the neighborhood of Abu Tor. Exploring all angles right now and the conflicting reports in, still police are not taking any chances and are closing off the Temple Mount to both Jews and Arabs, which is the first time this has happened since September 2000 and the breakout of the Second Intifada. We are first joined on the phone from Jerusalem by Chief Inspector Miki Rosenfeld, foreign press spokesman for the Israeli police. Miki, good morning to you.
Good morning.
To begin with, we are hearing reports that overnight the assailant, the suspect in the shooting of right-wing activist Glick, was actually gunned down, a man by the name of Mu'attaz Hijazi. Is this correct?
What I can confirm is after yesterday's attempted assassination, the Israeli police set up security operations searching for the suspect. We searched a number of areas, and the Israeli police counter-terrorism unit surrounded a house in Abu Tor. In the early hours of the morning, as soon as the house was surrounded, the suspect opened fire at our police officers, who immediately responded. And what I can confirm this morning is that the suspect was shot and killed. We believe he's a suspect behind the attempted assassination.
Believing that he's a suspect behind the attempted assassination, that's saying that it is not confirmed yet that he is definitely the assailant? We don't know yet, or that was the main, or he was the main suspect?
Well, we had strong intelligence that the suspect was in the area of Abu Tor, so as far as we're concerned, it was the suspect and the man who carried out the shooting last night. Since yesterday's attempted assassination, security measures were implemented once again, heightened security. And obviously we're focusing at the moment this morning, not just in and around Jerusalem, but focusing on the Old City and the Temple Mount area, where a strategic decision has been made to shut down the Temple Mount completely, and that's both to Jewish tourists as well as Muslims.
And this is the first time that Temple Mount is closing down since September, for both Arabs and Jews, since September 2000. That's the Second Intifada, if we're stating that date. How much more security in and around that area, and how much more security in Jerusalem? I'm assuming tensions are very high right now.
Well, tensions are high, but I can say on the ground level the situation is under control. Yesterday was certainly a surprise incident and something that obviously we're looking into very seriously. But in general, I can tell you that the Temple Mount area and security assessments will be made leading up to Friday, which is ahead of us, and therefore that is why the Temple Mount area has been shut down until now, to prevent any major incidences for the next 24 hours. In the
Menachem Begin Center yesterday, where the conference took place, there were several Knesset ministers, there were several high-profile people. How much security was around there? What do we know about the attempted assassination last night?
All we know is that the suspect himself arrived in the area. We know that he fired shots and quickly fled the scene. That's based on the eyewitnesses that were there. The attack itself is obviously something very serious. There were no clear indications that were received. So once again, we're talking about a lone individual, a lone terrorist who carried out that attack. He knew exactly who he was going to attempt to assassinate. But luckily enough, at the moment, the man who's in hospital, Yehuda Glick, is still in serious condition, but recovering.
Okay, Miki Rosenfeld, Chief Spokesperson for the Israeli Police, joining us from Jerusalem this morning. Thank you for being with us on the phone. We are going now live to Jerusalem. Again, joining us on the phone right now is I-24 News correspondent Mirav Savir, on her way, actually, to East Jerusalem. Mirav, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yael.
First of all, on the route entering Jerusalem, is there a sense there's hardened security? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Absolutely, and it's been very difficult for us to get near to any of the gates. We've seen a heightened security presence, police forces standing by at Lions Gate and several others, questioning people before they're allowed through, and there's been a lot of traffic as well trying to get to this area. Our cameraman was actually able to get there about 20 minutes to a half hour ago. He told us there was heightened security at Zion Gate, where we are heading right now. They were questioning him. He wasn't able to stay there for too long, and that is where we are making our way slowly at the moment.
Now, when it comes to Glick, who was shot last night, what do we know about the attempted assassination?
Well, we know, as you spoke to Mickey, that he was shot last night outside the Begin Heritage Center. Glick is a U.S.-born Israeli rabbi, very prominent right-wing activist. He has been prominent in saying that Jews should be allowed to pray at the Temple Mount, and that's something that's been hotly contested over the past couple of weeks. We've seen several people speak out of it. Palestinian Authority, Jordan as well, saying that Jews should not be allowed in the Temple Mount, and that it's suspected that is possibly one of the reasons he was targeted last night.
Merav Savir, thank you for joining us at this hour. We will try and check in with you in Jerusalem in the second hour of the show. Joining me in studio to further discuss all these events and what's going on this morning is, of course, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. We are very happy also to be joined in studio by Tourism Minister Mr. Uzi Landau. Thank you so much for being with us in the studio. We're going to touch a little bit first on this breaking news. And basically, when we're looking at Glick and his ideology, what was happening further on, Yehuda Glick himself was interviewed here on I-24 News several months ago. This is what he had to say on the matter of Jerusalem. Let's take a look.
In my belief, I think that freedom of prayer, I think that tolerance, I think that sharing are all basics in Western world, in Western society, and I don't think that's culturally acceptable that somebody else would say that you are going up to Temple Mount because you have a reasoning. I go up to Temple Mount every single day, almost every single day, and I've been doing that for like 25 years. I don't do that for any other reason than just going to the holiest place in the world, the only place in the world where a Jew is obligated to go. And therefore, I think that, I would say, we are talking about sharing, coexistence, tolerance, respecting one another. In what world do these things have anything to do with aggravating, igniting, rather than sharing, calm, peace? And this is what the whole concept is. I think that genuine peace, which we all want here in the Middle East, must begin with tolerance and respect. I go up to Temple Mount every single day, but I suffer from violence, verbal violence, sometimes even stones that are thrown at me. I try to develop for myself a mechanism of very thick skin, trying to ignore all of that.
As mentioned, we are very happy to be joined in studio by Tourism Minister Mr. Uzi Landau. Mr. Landau, this is breaking news overnight. Eyes on Jerusalem over the course of the last month, I would say, since, several months. Tensions very high in the city. Is the government, do you believe, ready to deal with, the closing of Temple Mount, tensions are high. Is the government ready to deal with what many people are referring to as the possibility of a third intifada that is about to start in Jerusalem?
First of all, we have to understand that it is the incitement which is promoted by the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mr. Abu Mazen, Mr. Abbas. That's a major problem. And he is trying to do that as much as he can. And this is what is really underlying what's now happening in Jerusalem. Israel is a country of rule of law enforcement. And I'm quite convinced it'll take us some time, not a very long time, until things will again be put in Jerusalem on tracks of law and order. By the way, even today, it is safer to be in Jerusalem, definitely in neighborhoods which are not highly motivated by jihadists or by terror, ideology. In all of the other parts of Jerusalem, it is absolutely safe. And in those parts which are under incitement, well, police will take care of that.
Well, police are taking care of it, but when we're speaking about something, the argument would be also that the actions of the Israeli government, that the promotion or the announcement of plans to construct, more buildings in and around East Jerusalem are actually an instigator to the animosities and the violence that the city has been experiencing over the course of the last several weeks.
Well, you see what, for example, was happening a few days ago in Toronto or in Canada. There was no problem over there, but for one thing, that you had a jihadist who simply wanted to target things which are opposed to the radical Muslim ideology. What is happening throughout the Middle East is something like that. And you just mentioned that what is happening in Jerusalem already takes place few months. It has nothing to do with buildings in Jerusalem. When you speak about terrorism in Jerusalem or terrorist organizations, they don't need an excuse. When they can put up a terror activity, they'll put it up. And please note, in the entire Middle East, minorities are suffering when it comes to radical Islam. The only place where in the Middle East, I would say, that an Arab can feel safe is paradoxically in Israel. And when you speak about Christians, see what's happening surrounding us in the Middle East. There is ethnic cleansing. And the only country in the world where the number of Christians is on the increase is Israel.
But it is no secret that the Palestinians, on their behalf, in the event that the peace process is ever to be put on the table again, regard East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestine. In that respect, even though there is no process right now going on in any way, shape, or form, all the announcements that are coming out, going to the point of why we're sitting here today, where the United States is condemning Israel for the announcement of constructions of more buildings in Jerusalem, doesn't that actually promote the tensions in the city? I mean, a city that, at the end of the day, the battle there is very religious, that everybody who speaks about it, lives there, Israeli, Palestinian, is very emotionally, connected and will be aggravated about any action or word.
Until 1967, Jews, for example, were not allowed to worship in Jerusalem, in blatant contradiction to the agreements that we had before that with the Arab states and including the Jordan. Only after 1967, the city is open to every denomination, to every religion. What you see here on Temple Mount, it is just a matter of, I would say, since the last Intifada, that the Palestinians have tried to encroach upon the rights of the Jews on the Temple Mount. And what is really the matter over there is the Jews would like to have even the minimum that is open to everybody. Now let me put it this way. Issues like that have never been an obstacle to peace negotiations between us and the Palestinians. The Oslo Agreement, the settlements as they try to call it, have never been a problem on condition that the Arabs wanted to negotiate peace. The Palestinian, and whatever has happened, has never been an obstacle to a peace agreement between us and Egypt, between us and Jordan. But whenever we had negotiations with the Palestinians, as it came to the point on all previous occasions that the Palestinians had to choose between an agreement with us that also meant a recognition of the state of Israel, and that they would be to our side, they always blew it. And in the quotes of our late foreign minister, Mr. Rabbi Ibn, he said that the Palestinians have never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. The underlying issue is whether or not we, like them, wish to have peace, or they would like to have an agreement that they would use to later on launch their war against it. This is the basic issue. They don't want to accept an independent Jewish entity here in this area, as they are unacceptable, as they do not accept Christian, Yazidis, or any other minority independence in this area.
There are those who would argue also, and speaking of which, for the reason that we're originally sitting here today is that there are those who would argue in the international arena that it is also Israel that is trying to maintain a certain status quo and not actually, move forward the peace process. The overnight events in Jerusalem come on the heels of 24 hours of really a horrific slug of words between Israel and the United States. Essentially, it was, the White House administration, supposedly an official there, calling the Israeli prime minister a very bad name, and in not so many words, a coward. And a day after the senior official was quoted as saying that Israeli prime minister is, to quote that, quote unquote, a chicken shit. And pardon me, I have to say this on air. This was the thing that was quoted in The Atlantic. A man who only cares about his political survival, Prime Minister Netanyahu, had the following to say yesterday in response to that bit of information coming out of the Obama administration, so to speak. Let's hear what he had to say.
When there is pressure on Israel to surrender its security, the easiest thing is to back down. You receive applause and receptions on lawns, but later the rockets and terror tunnels come. Our primary interests, security and the unity of Jerusalem, are not the chief concerns of the anonymous elements who lash out at us, and at me personally. The attacks on me are solely because I protect Israel. If I didn't adamantly stand on our security and diplomatic interests, I wouldn't have been attacked.
Tal Shalev with us, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Obviously, this is Netanyahu yesterday responding to whatever supposedly was said about him through the White House administration. For today, nobody's going to be dealing with that, I'm assuming, because of what happened in Jerusalem. And information coming out of, first of all, let's begin with that, information coming out of the Prime Minister's office regarding the overnight attack. Anything said thus far?
Well, Netanyahu did convene a special security consultation, a phone security consultation last night, and gave directions to the public interior minister and to the police forces. He's, of course, very alert to what is going on in Jerusalem, and he has been under a lot of pressure. The first harsh responses, of course, come from the right-wing part of his coalition. We had very harsh responses last night, both from Naftali Bennett and from his...
Saying what?
Naftali Bennett calling Netanyahu to restore sovereignty in Jerusalem. This has been a recurring reaction from him, even after the previous terror attack in Jerusalem. He has been calling Netanyahu to restore the Jewish sovereignty in Jerusalem, meaning to, of course, one, deploy much more security forces, but B, to exhaust Israel's right to build in Jerusalem, in the Jewish neighborhoods of Jerusalem. Uri Ariel, on the other hand, Naftali Bennett's number 2, also calls in response to open the Temple Mount to free access for Jewish prayers. And I think there's something to understand regarding Yehuda Glick and regarding his standing. It's true, he's a right-wing activist, but he's a right-wing activist that has been promoting his agenda in all the democratic and legal ways. He has not been engaged. He has been once every while he is involved in some kind of provocation on Temple Mount, but he has been engaged in legitimate lobbying for a cause that many people believe that is a legit cause, is a right cause, is a moral cause, and that is, of course, many people in the Jewish home and in Netanyahu's own Likud party. He's a very prominent member. He's been part of this party for many years. And this, of course, also happens in the Begin Heritage Center, which is a symbol of by itself. This whole event, it's regarding the Temple Mount and regarding Yehuda Glick, has a lot of potential to stir up inside the political right a lot of intense and tense feelings. So this is something that Netanyahu has to be attentive to. We have to remember this is his political base and the one he is trying to compete with Bennett upon. So this is one of the important stuff to see here. But Netanyahu will probably hear a very similar response to what we heard earlier from Mr. Landau regarding Abu Mazen, regarding Abbas, and regarding the incitement. It is true that last Friday Abbas did call on the Palestinians to protect Al-Aqsa compound by all means. And in Netanyahu's surroundings, people see a direct connection between these two events, between this call by Abbas and between what happened yesterday to Yehuda Glick.
Well, and speaking of that, Minister Landau, this is my question to you, that when Naftali Bennett, a member of the current coalition, calls on Prime Minister Netanyahu after an event as such overnight to take control of Jerusalem again, what does that mean? I mean, what else can be done?
It's very simple, just to try and do whatever necessary to restore law and order. Israel is a country of law and order, of law enforcement, and that's what you have to do. As our secret services, I understand this morning, looked for the suspect and came just to bring him down to court. There was some shooting over there. I'm quite sure that this is because he was not prepared to hand himself over, and that's what happened. But basically, we have, I believe, also to understand the kind of touch. What Mr. Abu Mazen, the president of the Palestinian Authority, said that everything should be done in order not to let Jews contaminate the Temple Mount. So this is the kind of word of incitement which is taking place. We have to understand that. So we have to start and put some pressure.
Is there an understanding, though, also within the coalition
Mazen,
that parts of Temple Mount are also very holy to the Palestinian community?
Sure. Yes, we agree on that. We agree. It is also holy to them. And that's what is suggested, just to try and see how all of the religions can fulfill their heart inside aspirations over there. That's the kind of a thing. The Palestinians and the radical Muslims are unprepared to accept anything which is non-Muslim and non-Arab. Please see what's happening around us in Iraq, in Syria, in Egypt, in Lebanon. You have no tolerance over there. And we're trying and reach all those elements that would live with us together.
Isn't there a danger, though, and actually touch left here, when, when Naftali Bennett says, grab sovereignty, return sovereignty, asks Prime Minister Netanyahu to actually, take control of Jerusalem again. What does he mean actually is actually more buildings, doesn't he?
He definitely means more buildings, but actually Naftali Bennett is promoting of even larger, he's pushing for even larger settlement construction and to actually removing the settlement fees. We should understand that the announcement earlier this week from Netanyahu about 1,060 housing units, it's planning procedures. This is not really demonstrating or exhausting sovereignty. It's existing plans. This is not new housing units. So in many ways, Netanyahu is actually losing from both sides. On the one hand, he's trying to appease the settlers with these
Calling
announcements.
Just for plans, but that said, the headline is 1,000.
The headline is, and it does bring a lot of tensions to the area, and of course bring upon the attacks from the international community. And one of the things that we have been reading this morning in some of the Israeli media are members of Netanyahu's government. We can assume unnamed members. We can assume they're coming from the center-left part of the government, but blaming Netanyahu that one of the reasons that Jerusalem is in such a situation is because he's busy in other battles. And it is true that Netanyahu is very occupied with A, political battles in the past few weeks, in the past 10 days, and B, in the past 48 hours, he had to defend himself against this unprecedented attack from the United States, one that did really insult many in Israel. The attack on Netanyahu, even though the administration was aiming at Netanyahu itself, trying to hurt Netanyahu itself, this attack has been perceived here in Israel and received here in Israel as not a personal attack on Netanyahu, but actually an attack on Israel, and actually something that should not be done, crossing a line in many ways.
And definitely not across all media outlets. This was, speaking of this, attack, this was Minister Landau, this is the slur, the so-called nickname that Netanyahu was being called by a White House official was splattered all over the international media, The Guardian, the London Times, whatnot. This is something that's very public. It is no secret. So it seems that the Obama administration and the current prime minister are at odds, to put it very mildly. And in that respect, isn't this, though, such a low point between the United States and Israel that Israel cannot afford to even just announce certain steps in Jerusalem and has to basically, maybe, and I'm asking you, just try and change the way it moves about when it comes to Jerusalem?
First of all, there are certain things which are of vital interest of Israel. And on that, as much as you wish to satisfy your friends, definitely the United States, certain things you can't give up. One major thing is Israel's capital, which is Jerusalem. Let me just remind us all, 1948, the United States, and this was during the administration of the great president, and Israel was demanded not to declare Jerusalem as our capital. The response of our Prime Minister, Mr. Ben-Gurion, was to move our Knesset, our parliament, and to move our government from Tel Aviv, where it was then situated, to Jerusalem. And Israel was much weaker, much smaller. And the United States was strong. There are certain things we can't give up.
But
This
it
is
is a
beyond
fact that the greater
debate.
Western world does not recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And, be it right or wrong, be it in the future, recognizable capital of this country, isn't this a point that Jerusalem needs to be discussed on an international level and negotiated because tensions there, because it deals with religion?
International level, anything that has to be straightened out in order to get to peace in our area must be directly negotiated between the Palestinians, and any move which is directed towards enforcing upon us, forcing us to make moves which are in clear contrast to our vital interests will not be accepted here. One more thing, we also have security interests. This country might be exposed to those threats that might bring to our destruction. I'll just note what Mahmoud Azahar of Gaza, a leading Hamas person, just said a couple of weeks ago that they wish to get their hand on Judea and Samaria and establish there a Muslim caliphate. And from Judea and Samaria, they will be able to quickly destroy Israel. Should we make any concession over there, as we know that whenever we moved out, whether it was in Gaza or in Lebanon, these places were immediately filled with extreme Muslim terrorists. And as of then, we have been suffering from rockets from these areas. So we can be very popular amongst our friends in Europe and in North America if we make those moves, exposing ourselves or giving up Jerusalem. There is no mercy for the weak in the Middle East. And if we wish to survive, we long for peace, we pray for peace, certain things we can do.
Tourism Minister Uzi Lando, thank you so very much for joining us this morning. Once again, a breaking news morning of an assassination attempt in Jerusalem against a right-wing activist, Tal Shalev. Of course, as always, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We will keep updating you throughout the day about what is going on in Jerusalem. When we get back, of course, a different story. Ebola quarantine rules in the U.S. continue to stir controversy and confusion. First, though, let's hear some more of this morning headlines. I-24 News, October 30th, 2014, where we say hello and good morning to Tony Grant, Anthony Grant, I call him Tony, who joins us daily to discuss the news you missed while scanning the headlines.
Scheming,
I know. It's breaking
whatever.
news that we had overnight, the attempted assassination in Jerusalem, and I think,
dramatic events there.
Very dramatic,
and
they were all, in the spin of that. What do you have for us?
Well, of course, as dramatic as that is, of course, the diplomatic drama which has been unfolding between the United States and Israel has not really abated.
No.
And this is, of course, a story of, huge international dimension. And again, it's I took a screenshot there from FoxNews.com, which basically, says it right there. The White House steps in it, then tries to clean up bits.
God.
There you go.
Chicken bleep, controversy.
And I was watching actually some things on the air via the States, and it's something that I think is kind of embarrassing to wherever you come from on the political spectrum. It's sort of the kind of language that you don't really want to have bandied about on the record.
You wrote to me late last night, and I did a scan of how many places around the world were reporting this. And you wrote something very true. So that's really, there's something uncomfortable when you open The Guardian, The Times, and you see the White House coming out with language as such.
Yeah.
And this whole thing not just played out in the media, but this, slug of words between two administrations makes you feel a little uncomfortable.
It's uncouth to say the least.
Exactly.
And interestingly, some stories are saying there's really no signal from the White House saying they're going to try to find any robust effort to find out who said it. I mean, free press and all the rest of it, but it's sort of like, oh yeah, it was
they
said.
did distance themselves from it. The State Department came out saying, we do not, support that kind of language, but they're not gonna, heads are not gonna roll.
Apparently not. Yeah. No cracking of the whip on that we know of as we speak. And actually, it plays into the second story of the morning, which is from the New York Times, which has this, actually the story just broke kind of after this flap. Mounting crises raise questions on Obama team's ability to cope. Now,
okay,
there you go. And not only is this maybe restating the obvious for a lot of people, but what the article is pointing to is, could there be a cabinet reshuffle in the works? Could there be heads rolling, so to speak?
In that respect, I got to tell you that all this stuff, as a citizen of the world, I'm feeling a little bit insecure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when you get a headline like that, we're talking about major questions being asked, and then we have, of course, the story, the midterm elections coming up in the U.S.
Next week.
Los Angeles Times, the story, this one Alaska senator, a Democrat actually, is avoiding even saying the word Obama.
Oh God.
Because
a Democrat. Yeah.
A Democrat, because there's a growing sense that the odds of victory are going up the more distant you seem from the president. So that headline
plays into that. So do you know the last time this happened? Actually, this happened to President Bush. I remember that when Bush was at the end, the second one, Bush, the son, when he was at the end of his term, also Republicans were trying to distance himself. I don't know if you remember McCain running was not really associating himself with Bush, which is a sad state of affair for, I think, both Republicans and Democrats in the last years of of politics when it comes to the United States. But as you said, I'm glad you mentioned it, midterm elections coming up in a week.
The power of language, the freighted baggage that comes with a name.
There you go.
Egypt independence, Masri al-Yum in Arabic there, talks about the story, Egyptian nationality is being stripped from 800 people, including Palestinians.
That's Mahmoud al-Zahar, isn't it?
And actually his Egyptian citizenship is one of those that's being stripped. And President al-Sisi is demanding a detailed report about citizenships that were awarded to 13,000 Palestinians since the 2011 uprising, asking to check if they were affiliated with extremist groups. So again, Egypt is very much proactive, is a diplomatic way of saying, cracking down on
I think one of the worst things
cases.
that happened to Hamas in the Gaza Strip is actually the deposing of Morsi and the rise of Sisi in Egypt.
For them, absolutely. Yes. Things in Libya are nearing a point of no return, according to Reuters report.
Sometimes it feels like they've crossed that point, but yes.
I think they have crossed the point. I mean, it's just, it's sort of off the radar because of all the, talk about ISIS and, and rightly so. But in Libya, basically they're operating with two governments at the moment, in a sense, de facto. And it's not that there's any easy solution in sight, but again, it's something that is a little bit off the main front pages.
The main front pages, I'm very glad you brought it to our attention because Libya is one of the places where the Arab Spring took effect several years ago and clearly not going that springy.
And very close by, of course, Tunisia, things are looking pretty good, actually.
True.
So
Thank
it's
you for
not
being
all
the
gloom and
optimist
doom.
in this due. That's true. In Tunisia, they had, actually the first free elections the other day.
And the Secularist Party, they're pulling ahead in parliamentary elections.
But when you see something like Libya near the point of no return, UN says it's fighting toll rises. It's, and I'm glad, and I'm going to say it again, but this is in the headlines because it's, it's a huge country. We just saw the very violent deposing of Gaddafi 2 years ago,
which was heralded as sort of, a sign of good things to come, but it's still quite anarchic, to say the least.
Very much.
In presidential palace news,
yes.
Turkish President Erdogan has unveiled his new home. Yes.
Now that he's president.
Right. It's being denounced as an environmental blight and that sort of thing, and as evidence of his autocratic tendencies. But there it is. It's on the outskirts of lovely Ankara. It has 1,000 rooms. And the architecture is supposed to marry modernism with traditions of the medieval Seljuk dynasty.
I'm looking at it. I'm sorry. First of all, architecturally speaking, me no likey. I gotta tell you, it looks a little bit Soviet, doesn't it?
It looks a little
like circa 1970s
with a soupçon of Seljuk.
But how many rooms? 1,000?
1,000.
Yes, okay.
It only cost $350 million.
Men in power.
Yeah.
Come on, men in power. Yes, okay. How big is the palace? And finally, last one.
There was a story yesterday or the day before in the Wall Street Journal about U.S. and Iran relations moving to détente, their word. Interesting stuff. And now we see another story, Apple in talks to sell the iPhone in Iran.
No.
Yes.
That's it, there's peace.
Yeah, no. We wish. There's a lot of obstacles, but
wow.
Again, it's an insane headline.
No, that's huge. That's huge. If Apple is in talks to sell iPhone in Iran, that means they know that the deal will be signed in 3 weeks. I'm not kidding.
I mean, it's really
like,
look
they're
at
already
the behind.
moving in. My God. Okay.
Aggressively so. So
No,
we'll see what happens
stuff.
with that.
Tony, thank you so much. Stay with us for the next hour. On to our next topic. 2 days ago, President Obama said that the United States shouldn't do anything to discourage healthcare workers from traveling to Ebola-stricken countries. That in remarks that contrasted sharply with the actions of governors in the United States who have sought to quarantine doctors and nurses returning from West Africa. The next story shows a different angle of a returning Ebola healthcare worker from West Africa. Dr. Myron Glick recently returned from Sierra Leone to Buffalo, New York, and was taking extra precautions to the Ebola virus. Glick spent nearly 2 weeks in Sierra Leone on a mission, and when he got back, he took matters into his own hands. Before we will speak with Dr. Glick, let's take a look at the following report that recaps the latest about the deadly virus raging in West Africa.
Significant progress, but the response is still too slow. The global community says mobilization against Ebola is bearing fruit, demonstrated by a decrease in the number of body collections in Liberia, a key indicator of progress. While the WHO confirmed 20 of its medical centers were short-staffed, the American ambassador to the UN is visiting the 3 West African countries worst hit by the virus. She noted encouraging signs.
And so we are not just looking to, as we say, bend the curve, which is moving, at a disturbing rate of infection, although, again, with some improvement of late. We're not just looking to bend the curve, we're looking to end the curve.
Nevertheless, hopes raised by WHO highlights the huge number of cases assessed, particularly in the capital of Liberia, where there are still 300 new cases every week. The United States, meanwhile, announced that they have cured Amber Vinson, the second nurse contaminated by the disease. And France, criticized for its slow response in providing funds, announced Tuesday that it is unlocking 20 million euros in what they termed an immediate commitment to tackle the virus.
Joining us from Buffalo, New York, on this very late night hour for him is Dr. Myron Glick from the Jericho Road Community Health Center. Good morning to you, Dr. Glick. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Now, to begin with, I just want to hear a little bit. You are, first of all, amazing work, I'm sure, that you've done in West Africa. How long ago did you return, and what did you do since you came back to the States?
I came back about 5 days ago, last Thursday, and I actually was screened on 3 different continents, temperatures, questionnaires. When I got to Newark, the CDC evaluated me, cleared me to come back to Buffalo. The health department here in town is evaluating me twice a day for the next 21 days. I've been cleared to see patients, and I'm seeing patients this week, it's been kind of a crazy week.
I know, I bet. But you also took matters somewhat into your own hands. Is it true that you semi-quarantined yourself in your own home?
No, I'm taking my temperature twice a day. I'm reporting to the health department, but I actually can move around the community. And like I said, I started seeing patients on Monday.
How are the patients? And obviously you're being honest with your patients before we continue. Yeah. Are you telling them that you came back from West Africa? They're okay with that, I'm sure.
Well, it's big news here in Buffalo, so yeah, everyone knows about it. I would say 85-90% of my patients have shown up. Sometimes it's been challenging. I've had people tell me with tears in their eyes that they came in because they trust me and they want to sort of speak against the fear that's out there. But like their daughters told them, they won't be able to see their grandkids for 21 days. So it's been challenging.
Dr. Glick, then this is exactly to the point. I want to ask you this because you're doing blessed, important work in West Africa, and obviously you're a physician in the United States. There has been what seems to be, to people who are not living in the States, slightly the mass hysteria spreading faster than the virus. And what has been done, in your opinion, what should be done to calm the American people as opposed to what certain governors are doing in and around the States?
Well, I mean, I think it really does involve speaking up. And I mean, that's partly why I decided to see patients this week. It's partly why I decided to stay up and talk to you guys tonight. And I think it really requires our leaders to set a good example. I think President Obama has done a good job with this. He's brought healthcare workers to the White House. He just brought the nurse, one of the nurses that was just cleared, and gave her a hug. You know, our leaders need to show by example that they know the science, that they're following the science. The CDC has put up good recommendations. I'm following those recommendations. Unfortunately, you know, Governors Cuomo and Christie and some of the other governors here have really put their fear and political expediency before the science.
No, in many ways, this seems like a political game, because at the end of the day, you and I know, I mean, and as the science shows, Ebola is not airborne. You are following all the precautions. It's also important to, you know, President Obama yesterday said to the American people, you have to be ready for one or more, you know, several cases of Ebola in the United States, because this plague is not being contained in West Africa. I think it's important for you to tell us, you know, in West Africa, actually, that's where the problem remains, and they need health workers like you, don't they?
Exactly. I mean, Ebola will never be more than an episodic case here or there in the West. We have good health systems that can handle a case here and there. I'm not worried at all about Ebola here. But in countries like Sierra Leone and Liberia, it's a huge, huge problem. And the infrastructure there is not set up so that they have enough doctors, enough nurses to deal with all the sick patients. So I think the UN director yesterday said we need 5,000 volunteers from across the world to come to West Africa. When we have so much fear in this country and we discriminate against our returning health professionals, it really discourages those of us to actually go over there and volunteer.
This is first of all, you are a courageous and very, very, very smart man. Question to you: do you plan on returning to West Africa, and you know, in the near future?
I mean, I hope so. I would like to go back. We have a clinic there that we support. There's a huge need. I think I'll have to sort of let the dust settle here at home, and you know, it'll probably be a couple months, but I'll definitely go back next year.
Amazingly so. And when it comes to West Africa, as a doctor, do you believe that the horrific outbreak there, and we have to remind people always, it's West Africa where this is happening, that it stands a chance to be contained anytime in the near future?
Well, we did get some good news from Liberia yesterday. That's encouraging news that the number of cases seems like maybe it's leveling off. But I know in Sierra Leone on Monday there were 91 new cases. Jesus. So I think the jury is still out there. It all depends on how the world responds. It depends on what the people of those countries choose to do, putting aside some of their sort of cultural and religious, you know, burial practices. So it depends. I mean, we have to contain it. So I guess I remain hopeful because I know, you know, you can't. Otherwise, it's too much to bear to think that so much suffering would happen.
Would continue. And it's people like you from the West to go over there and actually help the population that we need to remember to support their work and not actually, you know, be afraid of. Dr. Glick, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do take care of yourself. And, of course, when we get back, different stories. Human Rights Watch releases a new report on Boko Haram captives, the details of forced marriage, labor, rape, and torture that the girls had to suffer. We'll tell you all about that. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is still Thursday, October 30th, 2014. This is still the morning edition, and I'm still Yehuda Glick. Thank you for staying with us, and on to our next topic. Since 2009, the Boko Haram group has abducted over 500 women and girls. Human Rights Watch released a new report based on about 30 evidence that reveal the torture methods in life in captivity. Women and girls are forced to marry, convert, endure physical and psychological abuse, forced labor, rape, and whatnot. Now, to hear more about it, we are joined in studio by I-24 News senior news editor Ruthie Sinai. Ruthie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And let's take a look at Gabi Tartakovsky's report before we break it down.
The cry to bring back the girls abducted by Boko Haram is still heard loud and clear in Nigeria. Optimism was stirred 2 weeks ago over initial reports made by the Nigerian government that the 200 schoolgirls held in captive are about to be released. However, now state officials claim negotiations with Boko Haram militants continue. According to Human Rights Watch, Boko Haram has captured more than 500 women in recent years. The organization released this week some chilling testimonials by former female hostages.
I was forced to go with them on operations. I usually carried their bullets. They would make me lie down during operations, but I just held the bullets. When they wanted to kill the first man, my body was shaking and I fell down on the ground. They forced me to get up and watch as they killed the second person.
Meanwhile, the German and French foreign ministers met in Nigeria with local officials to profess their moral stance in this crucial fight against Boko Haram.
We support you in your fight against terrorism, against Boko Haram, which is a necessary fight not only for your country, but for the whole region.
Boko Haram has killed over 2,000 people since 2009, causing Nigeria to proclaim an ongoing state of emergency. Even if all the innocent women would return safe and sound at one point or another, the threat of Boko Haram tearing Nigeria apart would still be nearly impossible to contain.
We are also joined from London by Nigeria researcher at the Human Rights Watch who also wrote the report. Mercy Segun, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Mercy, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. These are, horrific testimonials, but let's start with, of the evidence that are gathered into this report, what are these women and girls going through after being abducted by Boko Haram?
Many of the victims told us how they were forced to cook and clean for the insurgents in the camp. As we heard in that video, a young woman was forced to participate in operations carrying bullets for the group. And many of those that we spoke with were Christians. They were forced to convert from Christianity to Islam, and many of them subsequently were forced into marriage with insurgents and raped and other forms of sexual violence.
And I mean, of these evidence that you gathered in terms of the report, how many even actually managed to get away after being abducted? And what is the level of this ordeal, and what is the, statistically, what is the level of women who managed to get out?
We have estimated that a total of about 500. It's definitely a lot more. That's a conservative figure. Were taken by the insurgents in 2009. But we also have tallied up to about 100 who have escaped. So we have 400 still in captivity. The victims tell us many, many more. They are not certain of the figures, but we've estimated from our own counting that up to 400 still remain in captivity.
No, definitely. Do stay with us as we delve into the subject. Ruthie Sinai, senior news editor for I-24 News. You and I have been discussing this for, many times, but coming out of this report, I'm thinking of the 219 girls who have been abducted in April. First of all, where does this stand? They're not being released right now, right?
They're not. We had high hopes last week that they would be. There was a ceasefire agreement supposedly reached between the government of Nigeria and Boko Haram, and within the framework of which the girls were supposed to be released. Nothing has happened. There are a lot of people in Nigeria who just don't believe that anything like that there is no agreement. government, basically. And they're saying, that President Goodluck Jonathan, who's apparently running for election again, has just put out this announcement in order to, to prove that he's doing something and that he's worthy of re-election. I actually would like to ask our guest from London, if I may, whether Human Rights Watch has any idea why the government of Nigeria is so powerless and so unable to get back the girls, to locate them.
I think the Nigerian government will be in the best position to answer that question. And with regards to the truce announcement, I think it's clear to everyone that it takes two to reach an agreement. And we know that Boko Haram is certainly not reticent. How is it? How can it be explained that in this situation, only the Nigerian government has been speaking concerning this truce, and the conduct of members of fighters of Boko Haram on ground contradict this claim of an agreement? Certainly there is a dialogue going on, but as you also noted, the Nigerian security forces appear to be powerless, and Boko Haram appears to have all of the aces at this time. So what would be in it for Boko Haram to reach an agreement? Perhaps there is something we all do not know.
Yeah. Maybe there's something we all do not know. And a question to you then as well. 219 girls abducted. This report comes out with horrific, testimonials. And I'm thinking out loud, do you hope that the world will intervene to try and release and stop this atrocity? And is there a chance that this report can push anybody in the international community to do something like that? Is that one of the hopes of this report?
Absolutely. Not just for the return of the 219 girls, but like I said, the several hundreds of other women and girls that remain in captivity. I know that a lot of foreign nations who would have given the Nigerian government more support in terms of support for the military have had to limit the kind of assistance they've made available because of the history of abuses and violations of human rights on the part of the Nigerian security forces themselves. So part of what we are hoping and asking for is that these allegations of human rights violations on the part of the Nigerian military be transparently investigated so that they can receive the support that they need to do what is necessary to protect the vulnerable in this conflict.
No, very true.
I just want to add something, that this is also having a ripple effect in the sense, apart from the tragedy and the families of these girls and so on, in the sense that girls in northeastern Nigeria are becoming increasingly afraid of going to school. So that,
Which Boko is the effect that Boko Haram is winning.
Exactly, yes. Because they are opposed to any sort of education for girls. And, girls, some who have managed to get away have basically said, well, I've promised not to go back to school. And others are really just scared.
It's a terrifying story, and in that respect, the horrific outcome is that the agenda of Boko Haram, that is actually gaining the upper hand. Mossy from London, who composed this report, thank you for joining us, and of course, Ruthie Sinai, thank you for being with us this morning on this very important story. And we are going now to some developing news in terms of the breaking news overnight in the Middle East, the attempted assassination of Yehuda Glick. Joining us from Jerusalem is Merav Savir, I-24 News correspondent. Merav, good morning to you. And what are we hearing now?
Good morning, Yael. New details coming out about last night's attack. Apparently, the shooter had worked in a restaurant right next to where the shooting incident took place. And a short while ago, details also emerged that they found the weapon and the motorcycle used by the suspected shooter. And also, police said that the suspect was imprisoned. He had a 10-year prison sentence. He was released 2 years ago. As for today in Jerusalem, there's heavier security around the old city. They're stopping cars and vehicles on their way past the gates, but they are letting tourists in and people in by foot. So I asked one of the security guards what it's like inside, what the security situation is. He likened it to after last week's attack, saying it's pretty much about the same.
No, very much so. Interesting also, this is the first time since the year 2000, September 2000, that Temple Mount has been locked off. 2000 September, that was actually the breakout of the Second Intifada. Important to remind quick question as well. We are hearing that the assailant supposedly worked at the Menachem Begin Center where the attempted assassination took place. Is that correct?
That's what we are hearing, that he had worked at a restaurant in the area where the shooting took place, right next to where the shooting was.
Okay, Merav Savir, obviously in Jerusalem throughout the day where tensions are very high. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we will be moving on. Okay, something completely different.
Yeah, different but similar. Similar but different. You know why I say that? You know, I was just thinking.
I'm going to lean back for a second.
Lean back.
Whew,
you know, remember that book, It Takes a Village?
Oh,
Hillary
yes,
Clinton?
by that woman, yes. What's
that
her name?
woman.
Yeah, that woman who might be next president.
Might be president.
Yes.
Speaking of which, if more women were presidents, maybe things like the Nigerian situation could unfold differently. Who knows? Just a question. I'm just asking.
No, I'm glad you mentioned it because Ruthie and I get upset and say, you know what? If 219 white girls, I'm going to say this: if 219 white girls were abducted anywhere in the Western, I think the military would be in. Yes.
But I speak of on a more fashion.
On a more fashion.
But no,
fashion, yes.
Question. Hillary apparently was spotted with Anna Wintour very recently eyeing a rack of
she's
clothes.
President.
Yes.
Okay.
Could she be preparing herself for a Vogue cover? Now, I have to say,
please,
it would not be the first time because in 1998, December, Hillary was on the cover of Vogue.
Really?
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I missed that.
I missed that too.
Wow.
But if she's going to be on the cover, in the next couple of months, that clearly is going to be sending a message.
Yes. If anything sends a message on President,
and not just that black is the new black or whatever.
I'm wondering what will she go, Kennedy-esque Jackie?
Well,
who knows? Yeah.
I think she wore Oscar de la Renta in 1998. And
that's going to be a problem this time
around. That's going to, unless it's vintage. Vintage.
True. Okay.
By her side, with Anna Wintour, was the lovely Huma Abedin, who was still married to Anthony Weiner. Not going there.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, no one like this. Do not go.
Where politics and pop culture collide in Anna Wintour's arms.
Yes. Okay.
Well, anyway, on a more cinematic note, Robert Downey Jr.
I love him.
Remember Weird Science?
Weird Science. Yeah. I love him when he's sober.
And many things.
And so many things.
Yes. We love him. That announcement from Marvel Comics, they're going to have this raft of upcoming movies. So he was at that press conference, and afterwards he goes to get his driver's license renewed in what's called one of the most loathed chores in human existence. Not my words, and I agree.
But it's true. It's true.
Look at how he looks, just fantastic.
He looks fantastic,
and
I'm glad they're renewing his license because he's been clean now for at least a decade.
Long time.
Yes. Okay, let the man drive. Okay.
Legally.
Yes.
Yeah. And? In dating news, there's a new device coming out called the Dorothy, and it lets you escape blind dates by clicking your heels.
I love this. Where was this when I was single? Okay.
You get this device called the Ruby.
Yes.
Ruby slippers.
Ruby slippers. Yeah, there's no place like home.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's like a Bluetooth-enabled device that you clip on the top of your shoe, and there's a smartphone app that it works in like cahoots with. So you decide which function you want to enable. Like you want to receive an incoming call from nobody, but that gets you out of a situation.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know who came up with this. I wish it was me.
iStrategy Labs.
It's phenomenal. I got to tell you, and this is a confession to make, and I'm sorry to that guy, but somewhere in my early 20s, I actually fled a date by going to the bathroom and never coming back.
Well, kudos.
That's really nasty.
Yes, you got to do what you got to do. You need the Dorothy.
You escaped through the window, right?
Exactly.
We're not in Kansas anymore. Yeah, that's going to be pretty popular.
Thank you, Toto. Yes.
Little doggy.
Yeah. Moving on.
George Clooney and Amal Clooney got married again. Symbolically.
Unbelievable.
Yes, they had.
Her parents threw this bash.
When did he become such a chick?
Yeah, at the Danesfield House Hotel in the United Kingdom, they were all gathered to celebrate more.
Okay, I mean, group question here to the studio.
Yeah.
Who's sick of it?
I'm not.
Seriously?
I think that there's a lot here that is emerging information, and I think it's going to be the wedding to watch for decades.
To come. I'm wondering where they're going to get.
And then the divorce.
Exactly. I mean, when people get married so many times.
I see this more as an alliance than an actual marriage, so I think it's going to last a long time.
I still think, and I'm going to say it again, that he should have taken her last name, not the other way around. But that's just me.
No, listen. Reverse trend. Speaking of which, more men should wear nail polish. if you look at Bruce Jenner.
Oh, let's look at Bruce Jenner.
The Olympian celebrated his 65th birthday by painting his nails red.
Wow. Didn't they think he was a woman?
Now, apparently he's not a woman, but he's looking, a little bit.
He's looking womanishly. Come on.
A little ladylike there, and we're not sure why he painted his nails.
I have no idea. Sadly, all the time we have, because this is just going every which way that I want it to go after this very exciting morning.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
Wow. Tony, God bless you. And we're going to click our heels. Before we move on, we're going to produce a Dorothy. And before we move on to our next segments, coming up, sports and something you should know about the late Robin Williams. Before anything else, of course, let's go back to the morning headlines. I-24 News Morning Edition, October 30th, the place you should be, because after all the breaking news, the mayhem, and whatnot, we are joined in studio by I-24 News sports correspondent Michael Friedman to brighten up our day.
Hi, how are you doing?
That's it? That's all I get?
That's all you got. A little more lively.
No, yeah, a little bit more for the two blonde chicks. Look at how gentrifying I am. That are with you in studio.
Very fortunate.
You are very fortunate. Look at what's sitting in front of you. Come on, excitement.
How did I get so lucky?
Yeah,
I love coming here.
I know.
My confidence.
The confidence boosted up. Michael Friedman, you have some breaking sports news for us this morning. Hit me.
The big news coming from America: World Series Game 7, big win by the San Francisco Giants.
Woohoo!
They are considered now a dynasty. It was a big win. They were going crazy in the fans.
And I'm not even a
fan.
You're a fan?
I'm not a fan of the Giants.
Right.
Baseball though, Yankees fan, unfortunately.
I'm a fan of the winners.
Yankees,
Yeah.
New York, come on. We're like three New Yorkers here, anyways, yeah.
Derek Jeter.
Jeter, I know. End of an era.
End of an era.
Yeah.
So it was a little sad. But
tell me about the San Francisco Giants. They were up against
the Royals from Kansas City. It was one of those series going back and forth. They were the favorites to win it, and
they were the favorites. Because I mean, the social media feeds were abuzz with go Royals, go Royals.
The Royals were the fan favorites because they were the underdog.
Right.
So because they were the underdog, people wanted them to win. However, the Giants, they were the best team, and they won.
And tell me about the game, because I know that you're a baseball fan and you're clearly American. I'm of some American persuasion. Got to tell you, never took to baseball. Long game.
I've never met a baseball fan.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm more of
Nice to
a
meet
soccer
you.
football fan,
Oh,
but
yeah.
as an American, I have to also be a baseball fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you're born and that's what they tell you. You're born into it.
You're born into it, exactly.
Yeah.
So this game was very exciting.
The
second inning, both teams had 2 runs each. The fourth inning, the Giants were able to pull up the third run, and the pitching was perfect. Madison Bumgarner just played phenomenal. He was the MVP.
And pitching perfect meaning what? Meaning that
he
pitched perfect.
He pitched almost to perfection.
At perfection, yeah. There
were some runs.
But
for him, he won Game 1, and Game 5 he pitched, and this was the series finisher, and he stepped up to the plate.
I just want to say one thing. I just sounded like I know what I'm talking about, and I have no clue.
You pulled off a little baseball
I did,
talk.
Didn't I? It's like pitch perfect, that kind of thing. Amen. But that said, we are going to bring it locally to a big run that happened here in Tel Aviv. Tell me about it.
The Nike Night Run, which happened in Tel Aviv 2 nights ago. Very, very exciting.
Very exciting. And before you tell us all about it, let's take a look at the following report.
The city that never sleeps hosted the 6th consecutive Nike Night Run in Tel Aviv. There were around 25,000 runners and also tens of thousands of spectators present to cheer the runners during the 10-kilometer route. After some stretching, participants got ready for their run with music. This event featured all types of runners, but the main goal was to enjoy the race.
Well, I can tell you that a lot of professionals coming tonight, I'm not sure that they will race, but they will participate. Like, we will run, as I do. Actually, I'm not going to race. I'm not going to compete. I'm going to enjoy running with my friends. And because what's beautiful when Nike started that, so everyone that never run, mark that as a goal for next year. They will say, okay, next year I will run the Nike Night Run.
It has become a tradition for the people of Tel Aviv. Each fall, the municipality organizes this 10K course, which begins at Rabin Square and goes through the streets of Tel Aviv. People of all ages took part in this race in a friendly atmosphere.
It's the first time for me. We wanted to do it in Tel Aviv. We run from time to time. We run. It's our first time in Tel Aviv.
The night run has a great purpose. For the municipality of the White City, it is to create opportunity for sport and a healthy life, a goal that Mayor Ron Hodai takes very seriously and has even invited the Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz, to join the operation. There are also many personalities who took part in this event. The French ambassador in Israel, Patrick Maisonneuve, reflected on the event in Tel Aviv. The diplomat surrounded the entire team of the Embassy of France and even finished the course in 51 minutes, a new personal record for the ambassador.
Tel Aviv has become a major international city and organizes great events, so when I see what is happening behind us, I know Tel Aviv is at the height of this event.
Most of the participants were just amateurs and enthusiasts who see running as a part of their lifestyle. Tali Ziri finds running as a way to excel and find new strengths she did not know of before.
I'm 50 years old. I had never ran in my life, and I found that it makes me very happy because there's nothing better than discovering that you can do something you've never done before. I feel that I can do anything after that.
The sky is the limit for me.
While the run is an opportunity for many to complete for fun, some come from far away and look at the race as a real competition.
I'm first place, America's #1. It's fun. I enjoy myself, but I definitely like getting competitive. That's, half the fun of it.
The Nike Night Run finished at the Sportec in Hayarcombe Park. The participants then received bottled water and free stretching sessions. All of the runners were also given medals and took part in a big party with a DJ. This wonderful event left the runners feeling great as they were all able to shine in the night.
God. Okay, crazy people. I got to ask you two things. First of all, if the French ambassador's running, then come on,
We should all be there running.
We should all be there, exactly.
You did it in 51 minutes. It's pretty impressive.
How long was the run?
10 kilometers.
10 kilometers. 51 minutes?
I mean, I did it in 43, but...
Just to, pat myself on the shoulder. Chen Lieberman is looking slightly skeptical there.
I mean, not only the runners were doing some sport that night because all the streets were closed for traffic. So even if you were just a normal person living in Tel Aviv and you wanted to go out that night, you had to do some sports to get to your destination.
You feel bad if you're not doing something. Like, everybody else is running and you're just sitting in your couch. You feel like, there's something wrong.
And why green shirts?
I think it's the brightness. Because it's at night, like they
probably
want
so
something
they don't get run
flashy.
over. Because I got to tell you, I was going back home. I live near there, and I had this, urge to run them over. But so probably they should have had those fluorescent, glaring shirts. But this is an annual thing in Tel Aviv, right? This is an annual thing that gathers a lot of. I mean, a fisherman didn't look like a professional runner.
No, there's runners of all different statures. The I just want to go for a run tonight, and the competitive, I want to get the first place, like this American guy. I don't know if he actually did come in first place. I would imagine not. But
I know he didn't. I just know it.
It doesn't look like he could run it.
No, not really. It was just okay. But who did win it? Do we know?
Actually, there is a winner.
There's a winner. I'm not sure who he was.
I'm not sure who he was, but I will find that out for the next show.
Please do. Love the way you report, honey. Really, love the way you report. Stick with us.
Sounds good.
Because, maybe Chen Lieberman, even if you don't know. Chen Lieberman, folks, Channel 10's entertainment correspondent, culture, anything and everything with us this morning. We love having this blonde power. I'm pushing the blonde thing.
Yes.
Some feminist is going to kill me one day.
Can I get a little blonde?
Yeah, you should. Next time you're in the studio.
Like a streak?
We're allowed to be blonde and feminist.
Exactly.
Right?
Amen to that.
That's okay.
Okay. Yes, what do you have for us today?
So, talking about feminism, Bill Cosby. It's kind of hard to imagine Bill Cosby as a rapist because it really ruins our childhood memories. But the fact is that 10 years ago, he settled a civil lawsuit when 13 women confessed about being sexually attacked or harassed by him. 13 women? only one of them identified herself, but 13 women confessed about it. So, but he settled it in a civil lawsuit.
Meaning he paid a lot of money.
Exactly. And America kind of forgot about it.
I never heard about it, and I was living in the States at the time. That's
and you
really
wonder why, right? So, well, he's in close touch with all TV networks, and now he has a new show for NBC. But the scandal is coming up again because of a stand-up comedian called Hannibal Buress, very popular in America, up and coming, and he's a writer also. He used to be a writer for 30 Rock. So he's doing his stand-up routine, and he talks about Bill Cosby as the smuggest black person he knows, because Bill Cosby has this thing of showing the black community in America as more elite. That's what he did in The Cosby Show.
He did in The Cosby Show. Listen, Bill Cosby is huge. The Cosby Show is a defining moment for American television.
For many African Americans,
exactly.
But many African Americans thought that this is not really representative of the real African American family.
They said that it was whiteifying, whiteifying the African American heritage. Was actually, this Bill Cosby plays a doctor. I think for us of that generation, remember that as children, it was this, living room. It was almost like a white sitcom.
Exactly. It's a white sitcom with black characters, and many African Americans.
In a way to appeal to the white America.
And that's why it was successful.
Yeah.
But now many African Americans are saying it's not really representative, and it was actually damaging for us. So Hannibal Buress, he's also African American, and he's saying Bill Cosby is condescending over black people, but hey, you're a rapist. So you don't have
heard of this story. This is, it's unbelievable.
Well.
Yeah.
And now, after this stand-up comedy, the stand-up routine that brought up this discussion all over again, a woman called Barbara Bauman is coming up front, and she's saying, Bill Cosby raped me when I was 17 years old. She was an aspiring model and actress. Yeah. He was her mentor, and after 2 years knowing her, she's saying he raped her, he pushed her on his bed in the hotel room, and she has this graphic description of the way he raped her. I'm not going to repeat some of it.
But is this going to be a lawsuit? Do we know, or this is coming out right now?
It's hard to tell, because I have to say, NBC, ABC, you don't see many reports. When I'm trying to look for reports about it, I see it more like
listen, the power of powerful people is the only thing I can say. The power of money.
Yeah. And I saw an interview with his biographer who was asked, why did you take off the whole sex scandal from his biography? And he's like, well, I didn't know if it's true or not, so I didn't want to mention things that are not true. But mention the fact that there was a scandal.
There was a civil
and I think that all of us are playing part in this, because for all of us, in the popular culture, it's just hard to think of Bill Cosby as a rapist. And I'm not saying he is, but we have to keep talking about it. I mean, 13 women...
It has to be investigated. It has to be, quantified. Needless to say, until proven guilty, nobody is.
Right.
But the fact that there is a woman who purports to be a victim, and it's out there, it needs to be discussed. Also, I think especially in American media.
It's going to hurt his image as well.
I don't see anything becoming a criminal, because he's 77, and all the incidents that we're talking about happened years and years ago. Exactly. But still.
Yeah, no, depressing and bleak. Yes, Chen, thank you for
still
that.
Very
What
funny.
else?
Okay, so let's talk about World War II more.
Please, uplifting stuff.
Uplifting stuff.
Okay, yes.
It's the war that keeps on giving to Hollywood. Turns out that Hollywood is obsessed with World War II.
It is. It really is.
Only in 2014.
The war that keeps on giving to Hollywood.
The war that keeps on giving. I think exactly. So you have this film called Fury. I saw it, and it's great. It's great because it really brings you into the tank. It's an American tank who goes into Germany after D-Day, and the Germans haven't surrendered yet.
So it's Brad Pitt hunting Nazis again.
He likes doing that.
Yeah,
he's getting good at it.
Although he looks like Hitler's dream. and it's not my joke. It's Zach Galifianakis.
Ding ding.
Yes, it's not my joke.
Yeah.
Zach, between two ferns, exactly. But yeah, he does look like.
He looks like Hitler's dream. It's a horrible thing to say.
He looks like a dream. He looks like my dream, not Hitler's dream. He looks like my dream.
And Fury's doing well.
And it's it's number one in the box office in the U.S. And it's a movie that really takes you into the war and shows you how horrifying war is, and some people need that reminder.
Never
I think.
heard that, not glorifying it, not making it pretty. People
Exactly.
die. Yeah.
But it's kind of like the sequel for Saving Private Ryan. And now there's a discussion about how Hollywood is in love with World War II. And I think it's because it's the last heroic,
It's the last
just
heroic
war.
American war that was fought in actually, fought in actual evil. Opposed to a lot of statements about axis of evil. Moving on to Robin Williams, though, in the short time that we have, because we have promised our audiences, what about his last film?
Surprising news. So his last film that hasn't come out yet, it's called Boulevard, and he's playing a married man who falls in love with a gay prostitute. And a shortcut, an early cut of the film was presented in Tribeca Film Festival, got great reviews, but now they're unable to find sponsors to distribute the film, and that's really weird. I mean,
that is very. They can't find sponsors to. The last film of Robin Williams that he ever shot. Everybody would want to put that out. Exactly.
You have Night in the Museum that's about to come out, but
but it's a bit part. I mean,
exactly.
it's hard to say a bit part, but because one of the characters there.
But it's not a drama with Robin Williams, and you'd think that people are eager to see Robin Williams in his last dramatic role, but now you can't find the sponsors. I'm thinking crowdfunding would be the end of it. It would be the end of everything.
It would be the end of everything. If you're thinking of Robin Williams. Post, sadly, post-death, cannot get this film financed. That's very bizarre. Wondering, is this just a quick question about that? Was it like some sort of an independent film, or the subject matter?
Well, it's a low-budget film, but it's not the subject matter. It's just that they can find distributors. They already have an early cut.
Well, you know what? If you're out there and it's crowdfunded, people put money into it. That said, Chen Lieberman, always great to have you here.
Thank you.
And of course, Michael Fluben, thank you for being with us. Go San Francisco Giants. This is it for us, folks. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, I-24 News Morning Edition, and of course, tune in tomorrow morning to start your day, as you should, every single day with the Morning Edition on I-24 News, because we're watching. There we go.